Hello guys, welcome everybody. I'm not sure everybody knows me, so I will introduce myself. My name is Romain, I'm French, and I'm a science and math teacher in Assumption School. So I will be teaching you math, and I choose to start with geometry. So what is geometry? Geometry comes from two Greek words. It comes from the word geo, it comes from the word Gaia. Gaia is the goddess of earth for the Greeks, okay? So geo means the earth, and metry it means to measure. There are a lot of words in science with metry. When you measure something in science, you use a word with metry. And metry is also related to meters. Maybe you know meters, kilometers, centimeters. It all has something to do with to measure. We measure something, okay? In school, so for you guys, geometry is the study of shapes. Shapes are like objects in geometry. Okay, so all of these are shapes. This is a shape. This is a shape. This is a shape. This is a shape. Okay. So why do we need geometry? We need geometry for a lot of things. We use geometry for everything in the world. Every time you want to build something, we use geometry. Yeah. Imagine you want to run around a football field. So you want to know how many meters you will run. So you just know the football field and you say, okay, I'm going to run around the football field. And I want to know how many meters I run. This is a geometry problem. Imagine you want to paint your house. You want to know how much paint you need. So this is a geometry problem. Imagine you want to build a pyramid. How many stones do you need? This is a geometry problem. Okay. Alright, so in geometry we use shapes, right? And in these shapes we have the basic shapes. The basic shapes are the ones that we know a lot of things about, and that we use to study the hard shapes, right? So you should know these basic shapes already. This is a square, this is a rectangle, this is a circle, and this is a triangle. So all of these, they are basic shapes, right? They're shapes that we know a lot of things about. And so when we study hard shapes, we need to see what basic shapes it is made of. For example, this house. What is a house? A house is just a square with a triangle on top of the square, right? It is a square, and on top of the square there is a triangle. Right? So if we want to study the house, we just have to study the square and study the triangle. Okay? So there are 2D and 3D shapes. You know that we live in a 3D world. Everything in the world is 3D, okay? But 3D shapes are not easy to study, especially for Math 1 students. So first we have to study 2D shapes. So how do you get a 2D shape when you look at a 3D shape, right? So example, if I take this cup, so this cup is 3D, yeah? But if I look at it from a point of view, example, we look at it this way, it's going to look like a kind of rectangle, right? But if we look at it this way, it's going to look like a circle, okay? So this is a 3D object, but this 3D object, this 3D shape has a circle, which is a 2D shape, and has this kind of rectangle that is also a 2D shape, okay? So it's the same thing for this pyramid, okay? This pyramid, if you look at it from the side, it's going to look like a triangle. If you look at it from the top, it's going to look like a square, okay? So if you want to study a 3D object, the first thing you can do is to study the 2D shapes that you can get from this object, okay? Okay, so together we're going to study the basic 2D shapes, all right? So let's look at these shapes and see what are they made of. How can you describe them? How do you know what is a square, what is a circle? Okay, so the first thing that we can see is how many sides there are in the shape, right? For example, the square and the rectangle have 4 sides, right? This is 1 side, 2 sides, 3 sides, 4 sides. 1 side, 2 sides, 3 sides, 4 sides, okay? The triangle has 3 sides, 1, 2, 3 sides. The circle has no side, all right? So we cannot use the side to describe a circle. So the sides is the first way to describe a shape. You can say this shape has how many sides, but it is not enough, because how do you know the difference between a square and a rectangle? The two of them have 4 sides, right? And you cannot use the sides to describe a circle. So we need to use more information if we want to describe the shape to someone. Okay. Alright, so to describe shape, we will use the number of sides, but we also use the dimensions. What is a dimension? So when I say 2D or 3D, what does it mean? 2D, it means 2 dimensions. I'm talking about an object that has 2 dimensions. 3D, I'm talking about an object that has 3 dimensions. Okay? A dimension is something that can be measured, something that can be measured in meters, in centimeters, in kilometers. Okay? I can say this dimension is 3 centimeters, for example. Alright? In 2D, we're going to use the length and the height or the width. Okay? That's going to be our 2 dimensions. In 3D, we're just going to add the depth or the thickness. Alright? So example, I take my cup. Alright? If we look at it this way, so it is just a circle, right? A circle is a 2D shape. So it's going to have 2 dimensions, a length and a width or a height. Okay? But if I give it some depth, I give it some thickness, what happens? I take this circle and I give it some depth. Now I'm getting this 3D shape, this cup we call a cylinder. Okay? Alright, so the first dimension we're going to study is the length. Right? The length comes from the word long. Something that is long has a big length. Right? Example, I take this pen. This pen is very long. It's got a big length. Okay? The second dimension we're going to use is the height. So maybe you know the height already when you measure people. If someone is tall or short, we're talking about the height of someone. If he has a big height, someone is tall. If he has a short height, someone is small. Okay? So it's going to be the same for the shapes. And the last one is the width. So the width can be used instead of the height of the length sometimes. It depends on what we call the perspective. Okay? The perspective is how you look at the object. Okay? But it doesn't matter so much. If you only use the length and the height, you will be fine. Okay? But I'm going to take an example to show you guys. So let's say I want to draw a rectangle. Alright, so there are 2 ways to draw a rectangle. I can do it like this, or I can do it like this. Okay? These 2 shapes, they are rectangles. They are 2D shapes. They have 2 dimensions. Okay? There is one here for this one. For this one, there's one here. Okay? For this one, there's this one here, and there is this one here. Okay. So we want to use the length, the height, and the width to describe these shapes. So let's think. I told you the word length comes from the word long. It means something that is long, has a big length. So which one of these rectangles look like it's long to you? It's this one, right? This one, when we look at this dimension, this one looks long. Okay, so we would use the length to describe these dimensions here. We would say this is the length of the rectangle. Now the height. The height, you know, is to measure people. Someone tall has a big height. So in between these 2 rectangles, which one does look like he has a big height? Which one looks tall? It's this one, right? This one, it looks very tall. It looks like it's standing up. So we would use the height to describe this dimension. Okay? And now we have left these 2 dimensions here that we don't really know what to use, okay? Because it's not long. The long side, we already used the height for it. And it's not, for this one, it's not really the height because it doesn't look like it's tall. So that's when we would use the width, okay? When we don't really know what to use, we would use the width usually. But the truth is, actually, it doesn't matter so much. If you would use the length for this side, it would also be okay. All right. If for this side here you would say this is the height, it would also be okay. All right. The words that just help you when you describe it to someone, it helps to imagine in your head. Okay. If you're telling me about a rectangle that has a height, I will think about this rectangle. If you're telling me about a rectangle that has a length, I will think in my head about this rectangle. Okay. But the truth is, it doesn't matter so much. If you say this is the width, this is the length, yeah, it's the same. Okay, when you draw the rectangle, as long as you give 2 dimensions, you will make the rectangle one way or another, okay? And when you think about these two rectangles, they're actually the same, right? If I take this rectangle and I turn it around this way, now they kind of look like the same kind of rectangle, okay? So it's just a way to imagine in your head that we use these words, okay? Okay, so let's use these new words to describe the basic shapes, all right? So we're going to use the length, the height, and the width to describe them. So now we can make the difference between a rectangle and a square. The rectangle has a length more than the width, okay? Or a height more than the width, doesn't matter, okay? But the difference is that the square has the length the same as the width, or the width the same as the height, it doesn't matter, okay? The two dimensions of the square are equal. They have the same value, okay? If one is 2 centimeters, the other is 2 centimeters. But for the rectangle, it is different. The dimensions are two different numbers, okay? All right, now the triangle. So you can use the length and the width for the triangle, but it's not very easy. But there is a way to be 100% correct all the time, okay? And for that we need to use the base. So I know the base is a new word, and we use the base, well, a lot for triangles and for some other shapes sometimes. The base in English is what makes you stand on the ground, okay? When you touch the ground, this is the base. Example for a person, for you guys, when you stand up, the base are your feet, okay? If I take this cup, I put the cup on my hand, the base is where the cup touches my hand, okay? The base is this circle here, right? This is the base of the cup. So we're going to need the base for the triangle. Why? Because a lot of people, when they think about a triangle, they actually think about a pyramid, okay? You see this triangle here? So imagine this triangle is actually a pyramid, okay? Like the pyramid I showed you earlier. And this pyramid, you're standing in front of this pyramid, and this pyramid is so big, it's so tall, right? And you look so small in front of the pyramid. And in your mind, you can understand if the pyramid is tall, it means that the pyramid has a height, all right? So how tall is the pyramid is going to be the height of the pyramid, all right? So for this triangle, the height of the pyramid would be from the bottom to the top of the pyramid, right? This is the height of something. The height of someone is when you start from the feet to the top of the head. This is the height of a person. So the height of a triangle is the same. You start from the feet, the bottom of the triangle, to the top, the head of the triangle, okay? That gives you the height. And I insist on this because in geometry, a lot of times we have to find the height of a triangle. And sometimes the students, they say, oh, the height is the side of the triangle. No, because remember, the height is a dimension. A triangle is a 2D shape. It has 2 dimensions, but it has 3 sides. So the height cannot be a side of a triangle, okay? It's something very different. The side is not a dimension, okay? For the square and the rectangle, yes, it works, but a lot of other shapes, it doesn't work like this, okay? So the height is from the bottom to the top of the triangle. Another base is easy to imagine the base. When you think about a pyramid, the base is where the pyramid touches the ground, right? So if you got your pyramid, the base is just the bottom of the pyramid, okay? So in this case, the base of the triangle is just the bottom of the triangle, okay? So when you think like this, when you imagine the triangle like a pyramid, it's very easy to find dimensions, okay? It's easy. You think about how tall is the pyramid, is the height of the triangle, so this one. And the base of the triangle is where the pyramid touches the ground, okay? It's the bottom of the pyramid, all right? So you can also use, sometimes maybe you see the length and the width, but it's much more easy when you use the height and the base, okay? We're going to look at a few examples now. Alright, so here I drew a few triangles for you guys, okay? Now let's try to describe these triangles. So they're all triangles, they all have 2 dimensions, okay? So we could use the length and the width. We see this triangle is very long, so we could say this is the length of the triangle. This one has a height, and then we could say this is the width. So it would work. But if we imagine all of these triangles as pyramids, okay, so this one is easy. It really looks like a pyramid, right? So the height, we need to find the height of the pyramid. The height is from the bottom to the top, so that would be the height of our pyramid, okay? The base would be the bottom of the pyramid. The base would be this one here, okay? So the height would go here, the base would go here, and then we're done. Alright, so this is the easy example. Now let's look at these two triangles here. Whoops, not here. Okay, I'm gonna move you here. Alright, imagine again this is a pyramid. So it's not very easy because it doesn't quite look like a pyramid, right? If it was more like this, it would be more easy. So maybe if it helps you, you can imagine that it goes the other way, okay? So big, long pyramid, all right? But if it's not like this, the pyramid would be, how tall would be the pyramid? The pyramid would be from the ground, so the ground would be here to the top of the pyramid. This would be the height of the pyramid, right? Then the base is where the pyramid touches the ground. That would be the base of the pyramid, okay? So that would be the height. That would be the base, okay? This one, same thing. Again, imagine a pyramid. If you can imagine there is another side, okay? Now it looks more like a pyramid, all right? Again, this pyramid is very tall. How tall is it? The pyramid is tall from the bottom, so here, to the top, here. All right, this is the height of the pyramid. Where is the base? The base is where the pyramid touches the ground. All right, where it touches the ground is there, here. Okay, I'm just going to remove this one here. All right. Okay, so that would be the height. That here would be the base. Now what about this triangle here? So this one is really doesn't look like a pyramid, okay? When we look at it like this, it's not easy. So what we can do, a triangle, we can just take it and turn it around, right? Now if we turn it like this, it looks quite like a pyramid, right? And again we would do the height of the triangle would be from the base, the bottom, to the top. Okay, that would be the height, and the base would be around here. Okay, so again, sometimes maybe the triangle doesn't quite look like a pyramid and you have to like turn it. What you can do is just draw it again. Okay, if okay, you have your geometry problem and they say, oh, you have a triangle like this and you don't like it because it doesn't quite look like a pyramid, you can just do it again, turn it around. You make it look like a pyramid, and then it would be more easy for you to imagine in your mind and to find the base, to find the height. Okay, all right. The circle. So everybody knows what is a circle, right? The circle, it looks like a head. It's very easy to imagine, but it's very hard to describe. The circle is a 2D shape, right? Again, if I take my cup, if I look at the cup from this way, we have a circle. This is a 2D shape. So it has 2 dimensions, right? But if we start to speak about a width and a length, it doesn't make much sense, right? Because that would be like a square. It has 2 dimensions, they're equal, the length and the width would be the same, but we can't imagine what is a circle, right? It has no sides. It's very hard to imagine. To understand how to describe a circle, we have to think, how do we make a circle? Alright, so how do we make a circle? Maybe you used a compass before. It's the thing that you open, you pick it, and then you turn around to make a really nice circle, right? So when you do this, what do you do exactly? You choose a point somewhere on your paper, right? And then you open the compass somewhere else, okay? So we have 2 points, and then you just turn around to make the circle. Okay, so here we have this distance, and then we say, okay, I want to make my circle from this point. Everything that is this distance from the center, the middle, okay? All right, and when you do this, every distance here starts from this point here to the circle is the same, right? This is same as this, same as this, same as this. You have made a circle. Okay? So when you do this, you see that the only thing that is important when you make the circle is this distance here, right? So now I made the circle like this, but if I want to make a smaller circle, I just take this distance smaller, right? And smaller and smaller. If I want to make it bigger, I just take it bigger. Okay? And this is the only thing that makes the circle bigger or smaller. Okay? This is the important thing about a circle. Actually, this is how we describe the circle. To make a circle, we need two things. We need the middle that we call the center of the circle. Okay? This is this point here where you tick the compass. Okay? And then the opening of the compass is what we call the radius. Okay, we call it the radius of the circle. It's the distance of how much you open the compass, how big, how small is the circle. All right. Now back to the circle as a 2D shape. Okay, so the circle is 2D. It means it has two dimensions. Okay. Again, I take this cup, a 3D object. We look at it this way. It has a circle. The circle has two dimensions. Okay, and the two dimensions, we can see it here and here, right? So that would be maybe something that we call the width or the length or the height. Okay, but for the circle it doesn't have sense. All we know is the radius. But let's look at it. Here, this distance here is the same as here, okay, because it's the circle. It's very easy to see that it's the same. And what is it compared to the radius? Okay, if we see here is the center, okay, here is the center, and we see that this is here is the radius. The radius is here, right? The radius starts from the center to the circle. This is the radius. But if we look on the other side of the circle, this here, to get this, we start from the middle to the circle. Here, this is also the radius, right? So this big distance here, that is one dimension of the circle, it is equal actually to the radius plus the radius, or 2 times the radius, right? Well, the distance 2 times the radius is what we call the diameter. The diameter is the radius plus the radius, or is 2 times, can write times like this, 2 times the radius. Okay, the diameter is 2 times the radius. And now we see the dimensions that we want to find, the length or the width, is actually the diameter, and the diameter is the 2 times the radius. Okay. And this one here, actually we said that the two dimensions are the same, right? And we can also see it with the radius. This part here, if we start here from the center to the circle, so that is one time the radius, and here on the other side we start from the center to the circle, that is also the radius, right? So the radius is here, radius is here. So here we have 1 radius, 2 radius. This is also the diameter. Okay. So actually the circle is very easy. You have only one dimension to remember, the radius, or you can call it the diameter. It is the same thing. Okay, we're talking about the same thing, the radius or the diameter. The diameter is 2 times the radius. Okay. Alright, so to describe the circle, we will not use the width and the length, but we will use the radius or the diameter. Okay, the radius is the distance from the center. So the center is the middle of the circle where you put a compass. So the distance from the center to the circle, this is the radius, or the diameter, which is 2 times the radius. Okay, that is what we will use to describe the circle. All right, so if you want to imagine in your head, you can think of the circle as the wheel of a bicycle. You know the bicycle? Imagine the wheel. Well, in the wheel of the bicycle, every thing, you know the object that goes from the center to the outside of the wheel, this is also called the radius, okay, because it goes from the center of the circle to the outside of the circle, okay. It can maybe help you to remember the radius and the diameter. All right. Alright guys, so that's gonna be all for today. I know maybe it's a lot of things for some of you, there is a lot of vocabulary, but this is really the basics of geometry. All the words that I used, I will use them again in the next lesson when where we will learn more about these shapes. So I really need you to know the name of the shapes, okay? I need you to know what is a square, what is a rectangle, what is a triangle, a circle, how to describe them with their dimensions, okay, the length, the height, the width, the base, the radius, the diameter. We will really use this a lot, so I really need this to be clear for you. So in the assignment, I will make a quiz for you to help you remember the words. Okay, I will use them again in the next lesson. I will try to explain again what they mean, but really I need you guys to learn them and to understand them. Um, Okay, so that's all for today. I hope it's not too long. Anyway, if you like the video, give it a like and subscribe to my channel. No, I'm just joking, but if you have any questions, you can use the comments or you can write something in the Google Classroom. Please feel free to ask me. Okay, I will answer any questions you guys have. I try to explain everything in this lesson, but maybe I missed something or there is something you don't understand. Okay, ask. Maybe a lot of people have questions, so now is the good time to ask. Okay. So anyway, I will stop now. I see you next time. You guys take care and stay safe, and I see you again for the next lesson. Bye.